This is Kirk Windstein from CROWBAR, and you're burning up on Hellbound.
Everybody, it's your pal Mean Gene from Hellbound. We are at the new Parish in Oakland, and I got the honor to speak to Mr. Kirk from CROWBAR. How you doing, brother?
Doing well, thank you, Mean Gene.
Yeah. Now, you're on about, this tour is roughly, what, 20-something dates, and this is stop 5, 6, 7, somewhere in there?
Yeah, I think this is 1, 2, 3, 4, this is the 5th date.
5th date, and whiskey last night, right, down south?
It was good.
Good show?
Well, yeah, for weekday, it was good, man. The crowd was, really into it, and it sounded good. It was heavy. They got a nice sound system. Yeah. They really do. So it sounded great on stage. It sounded, it was loud as fuck, heavy.
And you got who you got in this package? Insight with Rich Cavalera, and then you've got the guys from Tombs. How did this little package form over here? Were they handpicked? Did you guys just get kind of shoved together?
Well, when they threw. We picked Insight. We asked for Insight. We have done it. We did a tour with Soulfly and Insight, and we're hopefully going to do another one with Soulfly. But Robin, my wife, and Gloria became friends on the tour, and the ladies keep in touch, which is a wonderful thing. But we loved Richie, and we loved the band from the tour we did with Soulfly. So we've been trying to get them on with us for a while now. And then when they threw Tombs out there, I was like. I wasn't that familiar, but I listened, and I'm like, this is killer. And then now they have Andy from Black Crown Initiate with him, too, who we toured with in the past. Yep. And got to apologize to Andy, but it's not my fault. I see him at the first show, and I'm like, hey, how you doing, man? And I'm like, I know this guy. The last time I saw the motherfucker, his beard was down to here. Yeah. Now he's got some, short hair dude, a little beard, and I'm like, because I always say it, it's true. I'm very, very bad with names. I never forget faces. So I'm looking at this dude going, where in the fuck do I know this guy? And then somebody said it. I don't know if it was Matt, because Matt had told me that Andy was playing with Tombs. And then somebody said it, and they're like, oh, that's Andy. Yeah, he cut his beard and cut his hair and all. And I'm like, oh, thank God I'm not going senile yet. Yeah. Because I knew him.
He was actually my first interview when I started doing interviews, and I was pretty impressed with the long hair, and that beard was just ferocious. And then on Facebook, I noticed he cut it one day, and I'm just like, oh my. So I had to, I messed with him too. I actually commented on one of his posts. I said, anybody ever tell you look like that guy from Black Crown Initiate? Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to know he said he's going to grow it back, so.
Yeah, I told him he's got to give up that pipe dream about being a male model, because it's just not going to work out for him.
I agree.
Yeah. He's also been known on recent tours to go shirtless. Has he been going shirtless still, or no?
We have not had the honor of seeing him shirtless yet. Yeah. Don't know if I want to. Not that this is a lot worse. He's no bodybuilder, but he's also no 52-year-old fat pile of shit like I am. Yeah. So
I'm 44, and I'm
I walk around this bus in fucking slippers and boxers or whatever all day long with no fucking shirt. So nobody threw up yet. I'm okay.
Cool. Now this jaunt with these guys seems to be taking you West Coast primarily, and then some Midwest dates, and then it's time for the holidays, pretty much, right?
Yeah. After this, we're gonna have a break for a bit. We work our way, like tomorrow is Lake Tahoe, which I've never been to. Oh, cool. Then we have a town I've never heard of, Crockett. Yeah, it's pretty close to here, isn't it?
Toots, yeah. It's about 30 miles.
It's Toots, yeah. Yeah, I Googled it. It's like 26 miles. I'm like, well, why are we playing Oakland and then 26 miles? Yeah. But, hey, it is what it is. This show and that show were two later add-on shows, which is always, regardless of the turnout, it's always better than the day off, and we have fun playing, sell some merch, meet some fans. So, yeah, and then we do Eugene, Oregon, Portland, Seattle, Spokane. We have Thanksgiving Day off. Okay. And our game plan is to find a campground somewhere between Spokane, Washington, and Colorado Springs, Colorado. Somewhere really cool in the mountains or some shit, and just grill out. Yeah. And drink beer and whatever and chill.
Hopefully it ain't too cold.
Oh, it will be, but but we're all about it.
You came prepared, right?
Yeah. I brought no long pants. That's my mantra. That's the way I roll.
I see we're dressed similar right now. You know?
Yep. I will occasionally wear socks up to here, but this is my motto is, shorts in Russia.
Yep.
It'll be below freezing. I'm still in shorts. Now, keep in mind, all I have to do is walk from a van to a hotel or a van to the venue.
Yeah.
So all the other guys will be in jeans and everything, and all bundled up, and you get inside, and it's warm.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, not always in Russia, but still.
No. But it's a huge difference than Louisiana, right?
Oh yeah. But
does it get cold there?
Oh yeah. People are what it is. I tell people all the time, it gets cold. I mean, it gets occasionally into the single digits, but it gets into the teens, every year. But it might only be for 2 nights, and it's 68 degrees the next day.
Oh, okay.
That's the thing, is we don't have like, a month or weeks and weeks and weeks of sub-zero, it's not sub-zero, but sub-freezing temperatures. But yeah, it gets cold. It gets cold as fuck. In fact, when my dad was in the Air Force, a guy that he met, when he first had joined the Air Force, was from Minnesota. And they were stationed in Biloxi, which is only an hour from New Orleans, and it happened to be like a really cold, like 10 degrees or something, and with the moisture and everything, the guy's like, I'm from Minnesota, and I've never been this cold.
Really?
Because it's not like Colorado and everything in the mountains. It's cold, but it's not like in New Orleans, it's that damp cold that cuts you to the bone. It's not just the wind and the breeze and whatever, So it does get cold, but doesn't last. It's a few days, man. And back to, like I say, back to nice weather. I mean, it's sometimes Christmas Day is 75 degrees. Sometimes it's, 38 or something, whatever. But it gets chilly down there.
Wow, that's awesome, man. And I had a friend send in a question that they wanted me to ask you, so we're gonna go off topic. You know a guy named Joey Gonzalez, Blue?
Yes, I do.
All right. Well,
the money.
Yeah, this one. Wow, Blue, this one's for you. So Blue was asking what your favorite Louisiana cuisine is, and what would you pair it with as far as a dessert?
My favorite thing is a dozen raw oysters and boiled crawfish.
Okay.
With beer. I love all New Orleans food. I love seafood gumbo and any kind of gumbo you can make. Jambalaya, all boiled seafood is my favorite. Whether it's crab, shrimp, or we have lake crabs, we call them blue crabs. Shrimp or crawfish is my total favorite, and I love raw oysters. I like them char-broiled as well, but I like them raw the best. And beer is
beer the dessert?
Well, actually, even my father said, he goes, son, even when I was like 7 or 8 years old, if we had boiled seafood, I was allowed to have one beer.
Nice.
Because it goes so well with the spice. Yeah. It's kind of like Mexican food. It goes great with beer. It just does. But and I don't eat dessert, so I mean, very seldom. I'm more of a spice and salt type of guy.
I am.
I'm getting away from the salt, thank God. But I'll take spice over sweets any day.
I'm on the same.
Occasionally, I have a glass of chocolate milk or a bite of candy or something, but I'm not much.
If it's your birthday, you'll have a bite of cake.
A slice of cake, but I'm not the kind a lot of people get sweet tooth. Yeah. Especially a lot of dudes that smoke a lot. I only drink beer, but I can imagine if I smoked a lot, I'd probably be twice as fat. Yeah. But ask old Blue about old ball crawfish and beer, man. That's my favorite thing in the world.
All right. Well, there you go, Blue. I asked your question for you. Now, I know 2016, I think we had your last release, and that was The Serpent Only Lies, right? And that was on E1? Mm-hmm. And we got anything in the pipeline as far as new material coming down the line? Any riffage going on while you guys have been out?
We usually don't write on the road. We have a relatively long break when we get home, which we need because we're all going through some positive personal things. Like Robin and I and my stepson Chase are going to move into Big Todd's house. He's moving to Dallas with his fiancée because he's getting married in February. Okay. So he'll be living in Dallas, and we're renting his house out, which I'm super excited about because we live in an apartment now. It's got a 3-bedroom house, a really nice yard. We can actually grill out. It's a quiet. It's honestly about 2 blocks from the neighborhood I grew up in.
Really?
Yeah, I moved to that neighborhood when I was 11, and
Is that going to give you some more space to practice and jam out?
Well, I mean, not just the volume, because I practice with a little practice amp at home, but I just think, you know, it's a very quiet neighborhood. There's nothing around it, you know. I mean, there's a supermarket down the highway and one restaurant here, but there's no. Where we live now is 1,000 fast food places, 1,000 bars. Very congested. It's a great location only because you can walk
to wherever.
Yeah, we have a bar across the street. We have a convenience store across the street. We have a grocery store, you know, whatever, a half a mile away. And if you're eating healthy, we have a Whole Foods a half a mile away. You know, we have tons of restaurants, tons of bars, tons of grocery stores, things like that, clothing stores. We have a mall right there by where we're at now, maybe a mile from where we're at. So the location's great, but we're just done with it, you know. We want some.
Is it almost like a suburb situation you're moving to?
Yeah. It's not. I mean, and it's not far. I mean, it's like it's only a few miles from where we're at, but it's a completely different world because it's all, you know, it's all homes, no apartments in the neighborhood, and it's a nice neighborhood. I mean, it's where I grew. I moved there in 1976. Okay. And we lived there in 76, and my mom passed away in 06, so we were there 30 years. Now, of course, I didn't live there at the time that my mom passed away, but we still, at the time, my daughter's mother, my wife, my ex-wife, I should say, make sure I say my ex-wife, and I would still go almost every day or every other day by my mom's, you know. Okay. So, you know, it was. I mean, that's where I grew up. I even have a River Ridge tattoo right there.
I noticed your snaggletooth when you were up there setting up tonight, man. Yeah, see, I had to throw the man himself.
I'm sure I'll end up getting one. I always said I was going to wait until he passed away, which it was one of the saddest days. I actually got the email. It was at 6:06 Eastern time, Central Time. I happened to look at my phone. We had just got home, and it was from Phil Anselmo. Yeah. And he said, Lemmy died, and another friend of ours had passed away. He said, so did Trey. He said, you know, this month sucks. And I was like, oh, Jesus. And, like, I told my wife, and I just started crying, you know, of course.
No, I'm not ashamed to admit it either. I've grown up a little bit out of the fanboy stage of my life, but music's very, very influential to me. I've grew up with my parents always playing records and stuff, and the two hardest celebrities or artists that passed was Jeff Hanneman and Lemmy. And I shed tears for both those dudes, man, because their music means so much to me, but to the world, really, you know?
I mean, you know, like, I bought my first Motorhead record in 81, which was, I think No Sleep Till Hammersmith. I'd read one of the infamous articles where, you know, I'm reading a magazine. I've heard of Motorhead and everything, and then I was in high school. I graduated high school in 83. So I was in high school, and I had like a, you know, circus magazine or one of those, and it happened to have a little article on Motorhead, and it was, you know, they were voted the worst band, or called the worst band in the world, and I'm like, and Lemmy's quote was like, you know, we're the band, if we move next door to you, your lawn would die. Something along those lines. Yeah. And I'm like, well, these dudes have got to be heavy. Yeah. And my dad, believe it or not, he's 77. He's Judas Priest is his favorite band. He loves Iron Maiden. He loves Twisted Sister, Saxon. He loves Motorhead.
Fucking metal.
Oh, yeah, he loves it. But he's, you know, has always been just a clean-cut, three-piece suit business guy. Yeah. But he's driven us to Priest shows. He came and saw Kiss and Wasp and whatever. He loves metal. Okay. Up until that point. But I remember getting No Sleep Till Hammersmith, and it was so raw. And I'm like, is it too heavy? And he's like, I don't know if it's too heavy. It's really noisy, for lack of a better. Because, you know, it's Motorhead. It's the most raw rock and roll thing ever. Yeah. You know, and then we're listening to it together. And then when Iron Horse Born to Lose came on, that was the first one that really caught me. I mean, I had heard Ace of Spades, but, you know, that. Yeah. And then he was like, oh, this band kicks ass, you know. And I'm like, you know what? You're right, then.
Yeah, nice. So, how old were you?
16.
Okay. That's killer. So is your dad obviously a heavy influence on your musical taste growing up? Or was it partial to that, and then you ventured out on your own and found other things?
I kind of got him into my stuff. The thing is, I was born in England in 1965. My dad was in the Air Force. Okay. So I was born in Middlesex on the Air Force base there. So my parents had been there a little bit before. Obviously, I was conceived there and born there. But I was back in the States before I was even a year old, I believe. But at that time, 64, 65, 66, you had the Stones and the Beatles and the Kinks and the Who and all of this coming out in England. So that whole original British, rock and roll thing, the British invasion, exactly, thing was going on. And my dad was always a huge Rolling Stones fan. As I've gotten older, I've gotten much more into the Beatles and the Stones. But when I was a kid, it was normal, like you say, your parents, you grew up listening to records. He would listen to a lot of, he listened to rock and roll.
Yeah.
He'd buy the 45s, whatever, Rod Stewart or whatever was on the radio. He'd get,
AM radio at that time.
Well, we had FM come in as well too, but he had like all the Stones records and shit. So that was his favorite band basically at the time. And then little by little, when I started playing in cover song bands, I got him into, listening to Cheap Trick and Kiss, and he loves old Kiss. He's a fan. He's seen them, like I said. He loves the first Wasp album. He loves, pretty much all Motorhead.
Yeah.
Priest is his favorite, hands down.
Is it?
Yeah. Screaming for Vengeance and Defenders are his two favorites.
Okay.
So it was a funny story, too. He was like kind of, I won't say a traveling salesman, but the company he was working for would stock convenience stores with all their cigarettes and candy and pharmaceuticals and all this kind of stuff. And so anytime they would open a new convenience store, he would, all around Louisiana, and I think they started venturing into Mississippi as well, but he would go out and he was like he always would say, son, I can sell sand to an Arab,
Yeah.
I can, and that's not a racist thing, but, just saying, whatever,
Yeah.
And he's a good salesman. And so he's filling up his car with gas somewhere in the middle of nowhere in South Louisiana, and he had a Judas Priest sticker on the back of his car. He's in his three-piece suit. He's a bald old guy with the Elmer Fudd cut, big thick glasses and shit. Looks like the nerdiest dude ever. And some young guy with long hair comes up. He goes, "Excuse me, sir." He goes, "You do realize you have a Judas Priest sticker on your car, don't you?" And he goes, "Halford rules. Glenn and KK are the best on a dual guitar team and riding fucking heavy metal or some shit." And the kid was like, "Oh, wow."
Nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, my mom was, I had kind of the best of both worlds. My mom, she was Ted Nugent, CCR, the classic rock. And then my dad, he was like the Motown guy, and and as well as Little Richard, Chuck Berry. So I got the perfect blend. And then 12, 13 came around, and then it was like Slayer, Metallica, and all the classic thrash sounds. So we all evolve, and we're all kind of like products of our parents and some of their likes. And I thank my parents all the time for their taste in music, man.
Yeah, I mean, my dad being such a big, that's the thing is like. I can barely fucking hammer a nail or turn a wrench. Not that I haven't had labor jobs and stuff in the past, but it was always unloading trucks and shit like that. But I'm not like a handyman kind of guy at all. My dad was always my football coach. I ran track, I powerlifted, everything. I was always sports and music. Because that were my dad's two favorite things, sports and music. Because he grew up, he actually saw Elvis Presley at the Municipal Auditorium in New Orleans in like 55 or 56. And he was a huge fan of early rock and roll. Same thing, Little Richard, Chuck Berry, all of the original stuff, which of course, it's the roots of the British invasion, and then it all flip-flopped and turned into heavy metal and blah, blah, blah. It's all rock and roll. Yeah, that's one of the things. And I like it. It's a quote from Mike Nine from I Hate God, talking about something with genres or whatever. And he's like, I think he just said it, it's rock and roll. Yeah. I mean, you can put a spin on it and whatever. I consider Motorhead the epitome of rock and roll. I consider Rose Tattoo one of my favorites. The Thug AC/DC. AC/DC is the epitome of rock and roll. It's fucking rock and roll. Yep. It's got the groove, it's got the beat, it's got the attitude. That's it. Yeah. But it's all just, heavy metal is just an extension and a natural progression and growth from the original guys. So I think the Rolling Stones, would be the first ones to tell you they stole everything from the 50s guys, Yeah. And like for us...
look at Led Zeppelin, too.
God, yeah, I mean, I love you to death, Jimmy. Yeah. But I mean, they even got sued a few times. Yeah. And I've got my So-So and my Swan Song.
See here?
Oh, wow. Actually, I got to meet Jimmy Page.
Really?
In 2010 at the High Voltage Festival. When I was in Down, we were playing the show. And Ross Halfin, the photographer, was with Jimmy. And he happened, our manager was, who still manages down was Dave Snake from Skid Row, who works for McGee Entertainment, Doc and Scott McGee. And he's like, y'all want to meet Jimmy Page? And he didn't know him. And, I don't think Snake knew him, but me and Pepper are like, yeah, and he went over. He's like, excuse me, Mr. Page, I'll manage this band, blah, 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 whatever. Next thing I know, here comes Jimmy, and, they're like, no photos. We're like, not a problem, And, dude, we talked for, maybe 5 minutes, which doesn't sound like much, but it really is. Shit. And I showed him the Swan Song, the Zoso. I got the fucking, whatever you call it, tarot card thing from Zeppelin 4.
Yeah.
Like in Dazed and Confused at the top of the mountain, Jimmy.
Yeah.
So I'm showing him all this shit, and we're like, me and Pepper are talking and whatever, and he was really, really very nice. And he's like, all right, lads, we'll have a great show. And I shook his hand, and he patted me on the Swan Song, and I was like, oh, dude. Yeah.
How intense was that?
Very.
Yeah.
Now, did you get a little shaky or weirded out afterwards? After it was all over, was it like surreal that you met one of your heroes, or what?
Yeah, I mean, Jimmy, it's like you meet certain people. That's one of the like I've met Kiss, never met Peter, but met the other guys a couple of times, and because like we met him right before the Hellfest show in 2013, because Doc, McGee manages Kiss. So we had met him in the dressing room right before and shit. And of course, they're one of my favorite bands of all time. I've met Ace a couple of times, and that was almost starstruck. Pretty much Ace is like my favorite. Okay. But meeting Jimmy Page is just, I don't want to say it's a whole new, different level, but it's the mystique around Led Zeppelin and the whole thing is just, they didn't do interviews. There's very little footage of the band live or recorded stuff or whatever. Everything was so, it's almost like he's not human,
Yeah.
It's like, Ace is a lot more out in the public and whatnot, with his fans and everything. But, so yeah, meeting Jimmy Page was definitely a starstruck moment.
Yeah, I do a little bit of amateur autograph collecting and stuff, and I've actually looked into trying to buy a Jimmy Page autograph, and you could take somebody like Harrison Ford. Everybody knows Han Solo and Indiana Jones. Right. You look at the price of his signature versus a Jimmy Page signature that's authenticated. It's not even close. You're right. It's a totally different level
because he's so not real. It's like he's from another planet because he's never a public. He's never a he's a very quiet, personal man. So another starstruck moment to a degree, although the ice was broken big time, was meeting Barry Gibb, because Steve Gibb, who's a great friend of mine, he actually played Bats Barry's oldest son, who plays with him now. Steve played in CROWBAR for a couple of years. So, we did a video shoot in Miami, and we went to Steve's dad's house for a grill out and everything, and they had a huge swimming pool and all, of course, a beautiful home, whatever. And Steve's like, we saw him. It was kind of like, the Loch Ness Monster or some shit. No offense, Mr. Gibb, either. But he actually came to a CROWBAR show as well, but that was later on. But he came out on this little balcony or whatever, and we were looking up, he's like, hey, how you doing? Whatever. I'm like, dude, it's Steve Gibb. It's crazy. Barry Gibb, sorry.
Yeah.
We're all like, geez, man. And Steve's like I think he went upstairs maybe and talked to his dad. Like, look, the guys in my band here, they're all, big fans and would love to meet you if it's possible. And Steve came down and he goes, it just depends on, his mood or whatever. And, so he comes down this spiral staircase and we're like, dude, it's Barry Gibb.
Like a movie, right?
Yeah. So he comes down and he's so nice. And, I'm talking to Steve's grandma and she's having a scotch or something. And they got a bar, I'm drinking beer and, whatever. And, we're talking to Barry and everything. And he brings us into his study, which is floor to ceiling, nothing but, framed Rolling Stone magazine, Time magazine, People magazine, everything, all these awards. It's unbelievable. And
like his own Hall of Fame,
8 Grammys or whatever. Yeah, so we're checking everything out, and he's like, if y'all want to hang on a second, he goes, I want to go get, and I think it was like a Hall of, the Hall of Fame, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or something like super crazy award that he said he was most proud of. So he had that, I think, in his bedroom. So he comes downstairs with it, and we're there, and he's like, we're like, oh wow, that's amazing. And all I said, can I hold it? And he goes, yeah, sure. So he handed it to me, and I went, whoa, on purpose or whatever. And I'm like, he's either gonna have Steve kick my ass and kick me out of the fucking house, or he's going to get a laugh out of it. And he started laughing. I'm like, thank God. You know, he got it. Because he had a great sense of humor. He really did. And that broke the ice as far as like the starstruck stuff. And we were just talking, you know, music and life and whatever. And what a great guy. You know,
ended up being just a humble, regular dude?
Absolutely. Most of the people you meet are, you know. I mean, being that famous, of course, you kind of have to live a secluded lifestyle. But, I mean, yeah, as far as just having a conversation with the guy, fucking, you know, super intelligent, very witty, funny, great, you know, just very nice man. That's all you can say, man.
Yeah. Now, I've got it on good authority. Somebody, a little bird, had mentioned something about Oddfellows playing in its entirety in 2018. I don't want to give up my source, Robin, but yeah, is that in the works, or is that something happening?
Well, it better happen because we're already advertising it. Right. It's not going to be a tour, but we're doing a special set at the Roadburn Festival in Tilburg, Netherlands, which is a great festival, and we're going to do it in its entirety. And that way we'll know it, and we can throw in a lot more stuff next year off of Oddfellows, because that's one of the fan favorites for sure. It's one of my personal favorites as well.
I listened to it on the way up here today, actually.
I mean, I'll listen to it maybe once a year, and I'm like, see, to me, that was the first Crowbar record where we just said, and, you know, being the main songwriter, I was like, you know what? We're breaking down this fucking these walls, you know. We're not painting ourselves into a corner, so to speak. We're going to bring in some new elements, and if we like it, it's great. If the fans like it, great. If they don't, sorry, but it's time to make some kind of changes and bring in some new elements, because we listen to so many styles of music. We don't want to just be one trick pony, you know, so to speak. Even though, you know, Crowbar is Crowbar, but we have our fast stuff, our slow stuff, our doomy stuff, you know, some of it's like soundscape-ish, you know, vibe stuff. So that album was the first one to really bring in a lot of, you know, like, to me, coming off of Broken Glass, which is probably one of our angriest records. It's really
rough.
Yeah, it's. I mean, Phil produced the vocals on that one, and the production on that. We had Simon Efemi, who had done Paradise Lost, a couple of their records. He did Paradise Lost Icon record, which is one of my favorites, and he now does front of house sound for Napalm Death. So he produced that record, and Philip produced the vocals. Yeah. So that was at the time when Phil's vocal style was changing a bit more into, you know, the angry shouting type thing, but with proper pronunciation, not just, you know, where that's the one thing, like, he can have his angry voice, but he helped me a lot to make sure that you can, you know, you have to pronounce a word and understand what it is, even though you can, it's like Pete Steele, like with Carnivore. You know, well, by the way, and I got my new Carnivore tattoo also. But same thing with Pete, you can hear all the words, even though he sounds like he's ready to strangle you. You know, so I thought that Broken Glass was one of our angriest records, and then to bring in a lot of these more, I don't want to call it hippie vibe, but just vibey stuff, moody stuff with Oddfellows Rest was a big change, and it worked, you know, and that opened us up to have the freedom to bring in new elements whenever we want without really going against what our original, you know, goal and original idea of what Crowbar is, you know.
Did you ever find it difficult back then in the middle of all that to juggle the Down and Crowbar and the you know, coming up with the material and not wanting to rob from Peter to pay Paul? I mean, as an artist, was that a little tough to juggle, those two acts?
Not really, because what happened was, I mean, we did the Down Nola record, which was something written over about the course of 4 years, and then we did a 2-week tour, and everybody went back to their real bands. And Down didn't become a priority as the main act until 2002, and then when that happened, nothing really, other than the Life's Blood album for Crowbar, from the end, you know, toward the end of 2001 until, you know, whatever, for a couple of years, Down was a priority. Then that kind of faded. Phil was doing Supergiant Ritual. Back to Crowbar, back to COC for Pepper, back to I Hate God for Jimmy, and well, Jimmy was doing Supergiant as well, but it ended up being a situation where when we kind of got back together in 2006 with Down, we all said, okay, this is our main band from here on out. Every other band is now a side project. Down is a real band. So here and there were times to do a tour with Crowbar or whatever, but we didn't put out another record until 2010, which is at a point when down started slowing down a little bit more. But 2006, 7, 8, 9 was the main. Even 10, 11, whatever you want to call it. I mean, we parted ways in 2013, but the band has slowed down a lot because of. I mean, I'm not a member any longer, but still, I mean, Bobby Landgraf, who's a great friend and great guitarist. He was actually my guitar tech. He's with Honky, who's a killer fucking band. Excuse me. His priority is Honky. Phil's priority is Superjoint and the Legals, and Jimmy's got Superjoint and I Got, of course. Pepper's back with COC full time. Yep. So
it sounds like the flow it worked for everything, right?
Yeah, and I mean, the Rex Brown's got his solo thing, even though Pat Bruder's is playing with St. Vitus, who's one of my favorite bands. So I mean, everything happens for a reason. Everything, everybody's happy. Everything has worked out for each individual guy with their other projects and whatnot.
Still pretty close with Philip and Jimmy B.
Oh yeah, in fact we just played with I God on Halloween night, so we hung out. We had a blast. It was great. I hadn't seen Mike since the surgery and everything. He looked great. He kicked ass. It was a great show. So it was great to see him. But keep up. Phil's not a phone guy. Yeah. But we have Matt and I are on a Saints email thread.
I was gonna ask.
Yeah, where there's like 50 people or something, and Phil's kind of one of the main guys. So every day I get emails, and like I've told him, like I very seldom reply, but I told him, I said, dude, don't think that I don't read all this stuff. It's just by the time I get it and read it, 20 other people have already given their opinion, and it's like, I agree. I might just say I agree, or
Yeah.
But
Jimmy expecting his son to be born today, or did they have him?
At 8 o'clock. I think it was last night at 8 o'clock.
Was it?
Yeah, I saw something. I think it was last night. Yeah, he said, him and Dana, his wife, were heading to the hospital for 8 p.m.
Yeah, and I seen something else. I think he posted it. He posted it today. Something. They're waiting for the cervix to do something so they could induce. So it was happening, I think, today. Well, cool. Just in case it did, congratulations, Jimmy.
Yeah, absolutely. Love you, brother.
Yeah, appreciate the time. Let me wrap up with one of my favorite questions. It's the desert island question. Your answer could change tomorrow, but as of today, if you were stuck on an island and you only had 3 albums to listen to, what would they be?
Impossible, of course, but
Yep, I know.
Kiss Alive 1.
Double albums is double the music. That's what Todd keeps screaming.
Yeah, because I might go with Kiss Alive 1, UFO Strangers in the Night, and because Michael Schenker's my favorite, and Thin Lizzy Live and Dangerous. So I'm getting 6 out of 3.
Yeah, nice. And Mean Gene with Hellbound. It's Kirk from Crowbar. Catch them. They're coming up on the West Coast and around to the Midwest. Inside Tombs, Crowbar. Get out there. Support live music. Support metal.